U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the first shipments of Patriot air defense systems are already on their way to American allies, meaning Ukraine will receive them soon, according to Reuters. Speaking to reporters at Andrews Air Force Base on July 15, Trump addressed the issue of arms deliveries to allies. He confirmed that the initial Patriot systems are being sent to European partners. They're coming in from Germany and then replaced by Germany. And in all cases, the United States gets paid back in full, Trump stated. At the same time, according to Donald Trump, the U.S. will not incur any financial losses, as all expenses are being covered by NATO and the European Union. NATO's going to pay us back for everything. In some cases, we're going to be paid back by countries of the European Union directly. We're always getting our money back in full, Trump said. He clarified that some of the weapons are being shipped from Germany, which will later replenish its own stocks. During his speech at Andrews Air Force Base, Trump also emphasized that America will not become directly involved in combat operations in Ukraine. He added that this approach is saving thousands of lives every week, referring to soldiers on both sides of the conflict. On July 14, the U.S. and NATO signed an agreement under which American weapons will be delivered to Ukraine, with the costs covered by European partners. Today, we concluded an agreement. Mark Rutte will speak more about it later, but we've agreed that we will send the weapons, and they will pay for them. The United States will not make any payments. We're not buying the weapons, we're manufacturing them, and they will cover the costs, Trump said. The American leader clarified that European countries have a lot of money and want to help Ukraine. They are taking this issue very seriously. We make the best weapons, and we're going to be sending the best weapons to NATO. In some cases too, maybe at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they're going to be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it, the president explained. According to him, the supply of weapons will be coordinated by the North Atlantic Alliance in close cooperation with the U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker.
Responding to Trump's question about why Kyiv doesn't strike Moscow, Zelensky said that as soon as Washington provides the appropriate weapons, that will be immediately. At the same time, the US president also stated that Ukraine should put pressure on Putin by striking both Moscow and St. Petersburg, the Washington Post reports. Initially, Trump thought it would be easy to convince Putin to end the war. But yesterday, the US president admitted that he had agreed on this with the head of the Kremlin at least 4 times. Trump not only announced a new package of military aid for Ukraine, but also secondary sanctions against Russia's allies if the Kremlin does not reach an agreement with Ukraine within 50 days. Trump has not openly announced offensive weapons, but a source in the White House says that Ukraine will get the go-ahead to hit Russia with 18 ATACMS missiles. This is how many there are allegedly in Ukraine now. However, their range is only 300 kilometers, and they will definitely not reach Moscow and St. Petersburg, which is why Trump is considering the possibility of starting to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. The US Armed Forces actively used them on the night of June the 22nd, when they struck Iranian nuclear facilities. The Tomahawk issue was raised last Friday. Trump has not yet given the go-ahead, but he is keeping it in mind in case Putin does not give up the idea of continuing the war. The idea of long-range weapons was raised again during a phone call between Trump and Zelensky last week. The US president asked why Kyiv was not striking back at Moscow. Zelensky responded that there were no such missiles in the arsenal. Trump decided to radically change his approach to the situation in Ukraine for 3 reasons. First and foremost, Putin openly shows disrespect for the US president. Second, Trump saw the effectiveness of weapons to push the other side to negotiations. We are talking about the situation around Iran. Third, The US president realized that Putin will sit down at the negotiating table only from a position of strength. At the same time, Trump cannot yet answer the question of what will happen if Putin goes for further escalation. Former head of the Luhansk Military Civil Administration, former Deputy Minister for Temporarily Occupied Territories and Internally Displaced Persons, Georgy Tuka, commented on the probable scenario of a change of power in the Kremlin. I would not exaggerate Putin's sole role in current events. After all, after 25 years, this regime has built a collective Putin, who, of course, is not homogeneous. There is still competition for influence on decision-making and for access to the feeding troughs, he emphasized in a comment to Glavred. The expert believes that the current elites in the Russian Federation, if necessary, will find a replacement for Putin. But all of them are now united not by the physical figure of Putin, so if they find an alternative to Putin, the replacement will occur absolutely painlessly. But Moscow's policy towards Ukraine and the war will not undergo any changes. Under Putin, this policy will not change 100%, but even after him, the chance of the appearance of a person who will smoothly begin to turn the ship of the current ideology, which has swallowed up all of Russian society, is quite insignificant, and this process will last a very long time, Tuka added. Earlier it was reported that Putin suddenly started talking about his successor and candidates. The Russian dictator noted that there could be several candidates so that the people have a choice. The topic of a successor has been taboo in Russian politics for quite some time, and the previous presidential elections, March 2024, seemed to put an end to this issue. However, a situation has developed in Russia in which the taboo on a successor has not prevented the elites from actually living in the logic of the transition of power. Let us recall that famous TV presenter Savik Shuster previously announced the timing of Putin's death and spoke about his successors. Immediately after Vladimir Putin's death, a fight for power will begin in the Russian Federation. Says Savik Shuster, there are two groups. Patrushev's group is aggressive. It is connected with the FSB, but what is important, Professor Solovey emphasized, is that this group has reached a consensus with the Federal Security Service. And this is very important, because the Federal Security Service, as they say, controls the doubles, Shuster noted. At the same time, according to him, the second group is Sergei Chemezov, who is a person very close to Putin. They met in Dresden. He is also a KGB man, and Putin always put him in very important positions. Now he heads Rostec, deals with sales and development of weapons. Head of the state company Rosneft, Igor Sechin, will also be in it, as Professor Solovey said. And these two groups will clash in the struggle for power. Maybe they will come to an agreement at first, but then there will still be a clash. It is unlikely that Chemezov, who is already an old man, and Patrushev will nominate themselves for president, but they would certainly like to remain grey cardinals. This is basically the most important thing, Shuster said.